But I'm a lawyer. I would actually disagree as a matter of kind of principle that the law should define the line. Instead, we should define the line, and then the law should be written to help us enforce that line.
Yeah.
Right. To accept what the law says as the line is to put the cart before the horse, and also it locks you into the past, because laws are made hundreds of years, up to maybe a century ago, right? So actually, I think we actually need to question the laws that are in place, constantly question and evaluate if they're still relevant, if they're still productive or counterproductive. But that has to come from a place where knowing where we want to draw the line. I think that's what a lot of the conversation has been about.
Yeah. So it isn't that the basis of common law, for example, that it needs to be current, it needs to be relevant to the times, and be alive.
Well, this is one of the reasons in law school we don't teach students just what the law is. If you taught them what the law is, great. 2 days after graduating, the law's changed. Then what are you going to do? So law must change. And I think Kum Hung's absolutely right. Law should not be defining morality. I mean, law sets the markers in the parlance of it's always golf in Singapore, OB markers in Singapore. But the problem here to me is that law can do two things, and we're to some extent conflating the two. Law can criminalise and should criminalise the response. You don't take up weapons. I think the language of proportionality is wrong. I think there are bright lines that you don't commit acts of violence.
Yeah.
Whatever someone says, there's no justification for that.
Absolutely.
But in some circumstances, law can and will restrict what people say. And the interesting question that you raised is to what extent that should be predicated on the maturity of a potential response. And it's interesting that in many jurisdictions, Singapore included, there is more sensitivity to censorship, for example, in television and film than there is in print. And this is rarely articulated, but clearly the reason is there's a concern that more people will be more viscerally affected by a visual medium than by words on a page.
Right.
And so I think the reality is that law routinely does try and predict the response in terms of where the law is defined. But I come back to Kum Hong's point that shouldn't bind us forever. That should be an ongoing discussion about what's appropriate.